ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की नामचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर दासी गौरभक्त की गंगा देवी की जय, यमुना देवी की जय, भक्ति देवी तुलसी देवी महारानी की जय। ओ घोष सिंधु devotee, O glorious Sindhu devotee, O glorious Sindhu devotee, O glorious lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga, O Shri So Hare Krishna everyone, good morning, and thank you for coming for Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 7, which is entitled Further Inquiries by Vidura, and we're reading text 6. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Bhagavan Eka Sham. Bhagavan Eka Sham. Bhagavan Eka Sham. Bhagavan Eka Sham. Sarva Kshetreshva Apastitaha. Sarva Kshetreshva Apastitaha. Amushya Durbhagavam Va. Amushya Durbhagavam Va. Amushya Durbhagavam Va. Amushya Durbhagavam Va. Leshova Karma Vikuta. Leshova Karma Vikuta. Bhagavan Eka Evaisha. Bhagavan Eka Evaisha. Sarva Kshetreshva Apastitaha. Sarva Kshetreshva Apastitaha. Amushya Durbhagavam Va. Amushya Durbhagavam Va. Kleshova Karma Vikuta. Kleshova Karma Vikuta. Word for word, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ekaha, alone. Eva, Eva Eshaha, all these. Sarva, all. Kshetreshu, in the living entities. Avastitaha, situated. Amushya, of the living entities. Guru Bhagavatam, Guru Bhagavatam, misfortune. Va, either. Kleshaha, miseries. Va, all. Karma be, by activities. Kutaha, what for? The translation. The Lord as the Supersoul is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? Please repeat. The Lord as the Supersoul is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entities' activities result in misfortune and misery? The next question put forward by Vidura to Maitreya is, why are the living entities subjected to so many miseries and misfortunes in spite of the Lord's presence in their hearts as the Supersoul? The body is considered a fruitful tree, and the living entity and the Lord as the Supersoul are like two birds seated in that tree. The individual soul is eating the fruit of the tree, but the Supersoul, the Lord, is witnessing the activities of the other bird. A citizen of the state may be in miseries for want of sufficient supervision by the state authority, But how can it be possible that a citizen suffers from other citizens while the chief of the state is personally present? From another point of view, it is understood that the Jiva living entity is qualitatively one with the Lord, and thus his knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nations, especially in the presence of the Supreme Lord. How then does the living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? The Lord is the Father and protector of every living entity, and He is known as the Bhuta Breath, or the maintainer of the living entities. Why then should the living entity be subjected to so many sufferings and misfortunes? It should not be so, but actually we see that it happens everywhere. This question is therefore put forward by Vidura for solution. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So I seek the blessings of all the devotees that I can speak something that is beneficial for myself and for all of us, and that it can, the words of the Bhagavatam can penetrate our hearts, and we can apply this knowledge and progress on our path to bhakti. So Prabhupada in this purport is, we are at the point where Vidura is asking more questions. On Friday, Ikshwaku Prabhu was talking about how Vidura is inquisitive and he's asking so many questions, and his questions take up a big quantity of the Bhagavatam compared to all the other questions in the Bhagavatam. So it's mentioned there that if Krishna is in our heart as the super soul, that we all understand that he's in the heart of all the living entities, then why do we suffer? Why is there misfortune and misery? Can anyone think why we are suffering? Yes, our past acts, Sophia. Yes, desires. Yes, exactly. Yeah, we're not thinking of Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, so we are wanting to be the controller, and we may not realize it, but actually we are envious to some degree of Krishna. That's why we are in the material world, because we want to be the center. In the spiritual world, Krishna is the center, but because we want attention to ourselves, even as aspiring devotees, there's different gradations of devotees. So we can see within also ourselves, and sometimes we can observe. But the reason for understanding this is also for self. It's mainly for self-application and assessing and being introspective within ourselves. So even as aspiring devotees, we need to see that we're also doing sometimes devotional service, and it says that the byproduct of devotional service is recognition and fame. So within that, that's another trap of Maya, that despite doing devotional service, we think that, okay, I'm going to be recognized, I'm going to get some benefit out of it, people will honor me, they will give me things and things like that. So Krishna is in our heart, and we also, the living entities, this individual soul, have the same quality as Krishna. So we have Sat Chit Ananda. So in essence, we are all pure, but because we have come in the material world, we are conditioned by so many lifetimes of experiences in the material world, and we are identifying with our subtle and gross body. We think that this is us, this is our body, and we think we are our mind, and whatever knowledge we have accumulated thus far is us, and we identify with it. And it's so strong that even when we are practicing devotional service, it's this hard knot in the heart of identifying with the material body and mind is very difficult to overcome. But the solution is that the chanting of the holy names, especially in this age of Kali, The process of sacrifice, of yajna, is chanting the holy names of the Lord, which is coming down directly from the spiritual world. So we are getting purified and we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So our suffering and misfortune is because we are identifying with the gross and subtle body, the material body. It's just like an example in the material world. It says there that Krishna is there within our heart. So just like a father, he has many children and he loves all his children equally. But love is unconditional. So the father doesn't point the gun at his child and says, "Love me back." The father loves the child so much that he gives that child independence, that he gives him all the education and all facilities and gives him the knowledge. But at the end of the day, the child has to choose out of his free will whether to follow the path given by the good father or to deviate and try to enjoy separately from the father. So it's like that, that yes, Krishna is in our heart, but because he loves us, he gives us that minute independence, that free will, that choice, that whether we choose him or we choose to enjoy separately from him. Because we want to be the controller in Srimad Bhagavatam 7.3.12 in the purport. Actually, that's the pastime of Prahlad and Hiranyakashipu. Just recently we had Lord Nrsimha's appearance day. So this, it's actually Hiranyakashipu. He's talking about, he's trying to pacify his sister-in-law and his mother Diti and his nephews, because Krishna, in the form of Lord Varaha in the boar incarnation, had previously killed his brother Hiranyaksha. So he's even Hiranyakashipu, he was, my Guru Maharaj, he said something funny, Bir Krishna Goswami, he was saying that even the demons, they can be Vedic demons, just like Ravana and Hiranyakashipu, they were Vedic demons. So even us, we have access to this knowledge, but it's our intention and our heart, how we utilizing this knowledge. Are we utilizing this knowledge for sense gratification and just to cultivate knowledge? Or are we applying the Vedas for self-purification and to share the knowledge with others so we can get out of this entanglement of repeated birth and death in many life forms? So in that purport, 7.3.12, Hiranyakashipu is telling about how we shouldn't lament for the body because the soul goes on, but then he doesn't fully understand it. So it's in that same purport Prabhupada talks about in the pastime of it's in Chaitanya Charitamrita about a great devotee called Subudhi Roy. So when he in his charge, there was a young boy who was his servant. And when the servant did something wrong, he chastised him heavily and he whipped him just because he was doing very mischievous activities. Then he wanted to correct him. So sometimes it says we show the stick, but if by showing the stick it doesn't work, then we get the hard lessons, the hard knocks of life. So that young boy, he was very naughty, so he got physical chastisement. So he had whip marks on his back. So somehow or other, when he grew up, that young boy, he became he was a Muslim, he became a great Muslim ruler. So Nawab Hussain. So one day his wife, the queen, she saw the marks on his back and she said, she became really disturbed and she said, how did these marks come? So he told her that it was Subudhi Roy, and she said immediately kill him. But because he was grateful that Subudhi Roy actually corrected him because he was on the wrong path, even though he didn't really fully change because he came to that position by hook and by crook, not by good ways. So he didn't want to kill him, but then he took the the next punishment. He wanted to convert him to a Muslim. So he sprinkled water on him and he converted him to Muslim. So to try to understand during those times, if someone just sprinkled water on a Hindu or Muslim, their shadow passed a Hindu, they were considered outcasts and they were not accepted by the other Vaishnavas or the Hindu society, sorry. So then he was asked, Subhuti Roy went to all the brahmanas and he asked them, how can I be, purified? And then they said, drink hot ghee. So we know that if we drink hot oil or hot ghee, we'll die. But then he got the solution from the devotees is just by chanting the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So all the problems in the material world, even this propensity to try to be the controller, to be the center, it's futile because ultimately it all ends in suffering because that's not our nature. Our nature is just like the nature of sugar is sweetness. So our nature, the living entity, the spirit soul is eternal servant of the Lord. So materially speaking, servant, we understand in the material sense that a servant is someone who serves a master, and sometimes the master is not a good master. So no one wants to be a servant. But to be the servant of the Lord is to be in a very blissful state, because by serving a good master, a loving master, then one immediately automatically enjoys everything that the master is enjoying without separately endeavoring for it. So when we, in Bhagavad Gita 18:12, it says, a person in Krishna consciousness acting in knowledge of his relationship with Krishna is always liberated, and therefore he does not have to enjoy or suffer the results of his acts after death. So therefore one has to renounce whatever activities, and we shouldn't be afraid to do our duties, but we should always understand that whatever we are doing it for Krishna, and whatever gifts we are given by Krishna, whatever abilities and opulences we have, is all a gift from Krishna, and we utilize it in service to Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita 2:14, the verse Matra Spashas Dukantayas Sitoshna Sukhadukada Agama Payino Nityas Tam Stitikshasva Bharata. It says that Krishna is telling Arjuna, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, or sign of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So we are suffering because we are perceiving that this material body and also the subtle body, the mind, intelligence, and the false ego is us. And because of that perception, we are suffering. So Krishna is instructing Arjuna that just try to tolerate, just like when it's cold, we put on warm clothes and we tolerate the cold. And also Prabhupada gives in that purport that even in the winter months, like in India, the sages, the holy people, they would get up early in the morning and take bath in the river despite the cold. They would tolerate it. And in the hot season, the women would still cook on the hot fire. So they are tolerating, they are not neglecting their duty, they're still discharging their duty, but they're doing it as service. So in that purport it says, a great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties. Therefore he, that's referring to Arjuna, he couldn't avoid fighting. So even us, we are living in the world, even as aspiring devotees, we all have responsibilities and duties. Some are working, some are studying, and working, but we also engaging in devotional service. But it doesn't mean that we're neglecting our material duties. And so Bhagavad Gita is showing us also that Arjuna, he had a duty. He was a warrior and he didn't neglect his duty. And he took that position of being covered over just to ask questions to Krishna, so that it's for our benefit and so that we can apply this knowledge and get out of this cycle of birth and death and go back to our eternal home where we don't have to take birth and death, and we don't have to suffer from disease and old age. So in Bhagavad Gita 18.8 purport, it says that one shouldn't be fearful of by giving up his duties and think that it's one is performing fruitive activities. So it all depends on our consciousness. Just like Prabhupada gives the example of two people working in the office. So one person may work in the office and then Friday night comes, he uses his money to go out to the club and go to enjoy for sense gratification and intoxication and illicit activities. And then another person who is a God conscious person, he earns that income and he goes home, and then on the weekend or whenever he can, even in his home, he goes to church or he goes to the temple or the mosque, and he's glorifying the Lord, and he's also engaging his money to provide for his family so they can also go and serve the Lord, and all the activities are centered around Krishna, or in service to the devotees of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 3.7.4 purport, it says, Prabhupada mentions there that this material world is not for the purpose of the Lord himself, but is for the conditioned souls who want to be controllers due to misuse of their God-gifted minute independence. So that's the answer. Why are we suffering? Is because we want to be the controller and we're misusing the gifts that Krishna has given us, and the minute independence, which is a gift from Krishna. We are using it to turn away from Krishna, and we are using it for our own sense gratification. Oh, close. Could you please close that door? I'm feeling a bit cold. Sorry. Thus, the conditioned souls are subjected to repeated birth and death. So we have a choice, even as aspiring devotees. I remember one class, Ramai Swami was saying that we always have a choice. Every moment by moment, we always have a choice, because he says everyone's asking, what's the balance? We're living in the world, where do we find the balance? But it's not so much a question of balance, but it's always being conscious and being mindful of making a choice every moment, that am I choosing Krishna or am I choosing sense gratification? So even one may be practicing for so many years, we see sometimes also, we hear in the pages of Bhagavatam that great devotees may also fall down. It's because we're not being careful. So I remember Vaisheshika Prabhu's classes, he always says that we should always be diligent and we should always be cautious on the path of bhakti, because there can be, on the path of bhakti, it's described, Prabhupada mentions, is like a razor's edge. That if we just, in the old days at the barber, they didn't used to have those shavers for men. They would shave with these sharp kind of knives, kind of things. Yeah, thank you, Krishna Rupa Mataji, cutthroat razors. So if they just accidentally, a moment of inattention, and they could cut themselves, or if a barber, if he got distracted and he's shaving around the neck, and he could cut the person and they could die. So in the material world, we shouldn't become complacent. We should always be diligent and always be attentive. And that's why we are so fortunate that we are in the association of devotees, because we can always be reminded, just by also looking at a devotee, we can be reminded, oh, I need to also become, like them and be serious in Krishna consciousness. So we should always, by moment, we always have that choice that we are making, whether we are choosing Krishna or we are just on the path and just being mechanical, even on the devotional path, just coming and bowing down and not really being conscious of why we are bowing down. We're bowing down to Krishna and the devotees. I remember the Zoom initiation class that Indudumna Swami was giving to Sri Radhika Charanarenu, and he was saying that, when devotees bow down, they just bow down and they come to the temple and go Haribol and stand up. So we are bowing down and we are saying Prabhupada's pranam prayers, our spiritual master's pranam prayers. We are saying the prayers, Vanchakalpatrubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. We are paying obeisances to Krishna, to Srila Prabhupada, to the acharyas, to the devotees, so that we can remain fixed on this path of devotional service. So I found that really interesting in Srimad Bhagavatam, just a few purports prior to this one, 733. It says the opulence of the Lord's attachment and detachment. So he is attached to everything, yet he is detached from everything. So the example of the loving Father, that he's and the super soul. So he's within our heart, but he's attached to everything, yet he's detached. So if there's a loving Father and he sees his son is doing something bad, and that son doesn't want anything to do with him, he has to keep a bit aloof and be renounced. So that is the opulence of Krishna, that he has the opulence of renunciation, of being aloof and not interfering with that free will that we have, the choices that we make. And yet it's in that purport, it says that he's also attached to everything. So I was just remembering the pastime in Brihad Bhagavatamrita about Gopakumar, that Krishna, even though he has that opulence of renunciation and of detachment, and he remains aloof, he's so loving that he's waiting for us to come back to him. When Gopakumar came back to the spiritual world after so many lifetimes, he took birth, even he took the post of Brahma, so that's a very, very long time. So, and he was crying and he even fainted. They both fainted when they saw each other. So Krishna, he simultaneously, he's so attached and so loving, and he's also keeps himself aloof, because he loves us so much that he doesn't take away that minute independence. That's his gift to us. Like in 374 purport, it says it's a God-given gift, that minute independence, because he loves us so much, he gives us that independence. So in Bhagavad Gita 6.1 purport, it says, Prabhupada mentions there that a Krishna conscious person has no desire for self-satisfaction. His criterion of success is the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus he is the perfect sannyasi or perfect yogi. And in that purport, it gives the example of Lord Chaitanya himself. So Krishna himself came in as a form of a devotee to teach by his personal example. So every morning we're reciting the Sikshashtakam prayers, and there's the verse, Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim. So we're not asking for wealth, we're not asking for a beautiful wife or husband, and we're not asking for fame and recognition. And what Lord Chaitanya is asking, he's teaching us to ask for, is that I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. So he's teaching us that by desiring that, then all our misfortune and miseries automatically are vanquished, and we are always on the blissful path of bhakti. In Bhagavad Gita 11:55 purport, Prabhupada talks about, excuse me, he talks about Krishna karma. It says that no work should be done by any man except in relationship to Krishna. One may be engaged in various activities, but one should not be attached to the result of his work. The result should be done only for him, for Krishna. And one should accept as prasadam the remnants of offerings to Krishna. So just like we working, some of us, or whatever we do, we earning that money, but we understanding that there's one in Bhagavatam is saying that our work is not, says that what the money we make from our work is not what is maintaining us. What is maintaining us is Krishna. So ultimately, it's Krishna who is maintaining us. And when we utilize that money or whatever gifts we get from Krishna, even through our hard work, and we utilize it for Krishna, that is actually using that as prasadam. It's offered to the Lord with the consciousness that this is for the service of the Lord, and it's utilized as remnants in the Lord's service. Like in the old days, Prabhupada said to the devotees, that you offer everything to Krishna, and they would even offer their jeans to Krishna before they would wear them. So they were understanding that using the prasadam remnants in service to Krishna. So that is Krishna karma, utilizing whatever we have in Krishna's service. So it's Krishna who's maintaining us. It's not anything else. Just like we see the example of someone who goes to, there's two people who are sick and they have maybe they have some heart condition and they go to a specialist. So the doctor can operate on both patients, but one dies. But it's the same doctor. He's applying the same procedure, but what is wrong is that Krishna is made. When the time comes for someone, then they will die, and when it's Krishna wants to save someone, then no one can kill him. So ultimately, it's Krishna. So the surgeon who is God conscious is understanding that I'm given these skills in service of the Lord, but ultimately it is God who is actually saving this person's life, or if it's time for that person, then that person moves on. So that is the proper utilization and understanding of Krishna karma. So in that same purport, it talks about how Prahlad Maharaj and even Haridas Thakur, that they suffered so much because they were trying to also share Krishna consciousness with others. And they understood that a Krishna conscious person knows that if a man is suffering, it is due to his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. So that's why we are suffering, because we are identifying with the material body and we are thinking we are separate from Krishna and we forgot Krishna. That's why we are suffering. And that's why great personalities like Haridas Thakur, Prahlad Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, they have come to give us Krishna so that we can get out of this material world, which is just full of suffering. Now, this material world, we want to enjoy, but it's just designed in such a way that everything over time, it's like fruits, they become rotten. It's just the nature of the world. Everything disintegrates and it all ends in, it all finishes. But we understand that the living entity, the spirit soul, is eternal. So even with the death of the body, the soul keeps moving on. But until we come to Krishna consciousness and we become purified, the soul will not be able to go back to the spiritual world. So we want to go back to Krishna, and so we need to become serious in Krishna consciousness. I'll just quickly end with this one pastime which shows the seriousness of bad association. So in Krishna book, there's a chapter called Deliverance of the Demon Banasura. So another name of Banasura is Narakasura, and he was actually the son of Krishna. So when Krishna saved Mother Earth, when Hiranyaksha took her out of orbit, then he came as Lord Varaha. So Narakasura is the son of Prithvi or Bhumi Devi with Lord Varaha. So he, even though like Krishna is in the heart as the super soul, so Narakasura, he had Krishna within and without. He had Krishna as his father and also the super soul in the heart. But because of bad association with Bana, who was another demon, he was doing very bad things. He was mistreating the people under his care, and he was doing very bad things. And because he was doing bad things, even Krishna, he killed his own son. So even we are on this path of Krishna consciousness, it doesn't mean that it's like my Guru Maharaj once at one initiation lecture, he was saying that, okay, now I've taken initiation, and he clicked his fingers and he said, oh, now I'm on an easy plane ride going back to Godhead. No, we have to keep working. Just like Ramai Swami was saying, at every moment we always have a choice. It's not like, okay, we've taken initiation and that's our, yes, that's our ticket, but we need to work for it. Just like in the mature world, we have to work, we have a job, and we are working at it. So when we come on the spiritual path, then why should we think that it's so cheap, that it's just a free plane ride and, very easy life? In fact, it's even more responsibility. Like in Bhagavad Gita 2:14, it says that it's a great heritage. We've come to ISKCON, and it brings about great responsibility. And we need to discharge our duty very carefully, even materially, because it's even our material duties are spiritual. It's just a matter of perception, seeing that this is all for Krishna, and utilizing everything we have for Krishna service, and every service we have been given, to do it very carefully. It's not just only on festival days I make an effort to make a beautiful garland, or only on festival days I try to dress the deities very beautifully, or when someone comes. Every single thing we do, in every single service we do, everything we do, even when no one is watching and we in our home, just to remind ourselves that try to do everything very nicely for Krishna. And yes, sometimes we may fall down and we may be covered over by Maya, but we shouldn't become despondent. Just like a child, a little child, he is learning to walk and he falls down and he gets bruises, but he keeps getting up, and then eventually he starts walking and he starts running. And his family members, the loving family members, the mother, the father, they're encouraging him, just like the devotees, the association of devotees, they encourage us in devotional service, and they lift us up, and we keep going. So on this path of bhakti in the mature world is very difficult, and we have, we are conditioned, and we may fall down, but we keep getting up, and keep staying in the association of devotees and practicing this path of bhakti. So I'll end there. If anyone has any questions, comments, or corrections. Okay, thank you very much. श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, शिव प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय।